right now.
Thank you, Bethany. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. And before we get started, I just want to do a bit of a roundtable about what's bringing people to the meeting tonight. We are meeting with Leir House tenants, and so we have some of our council members, but I don't know if they're wearing their tenant hat tonight or if they're wearing their council hat. So I'll just start by asking Bethany to say hello.
Hello, I'm Bethany Hanfield. I'm the administrator at the Penticton and District Community Arts Council, and we're also the managers of the Leir House.
Great. Let's go with Nancy next. Nancy Wise.
Hello. Yes, I am on the PAMDA board. Delighted to be part of that organization in its vibrancy in the upstairs floor of beautiful Leir House.
Excellent. And Cathy, is it Cathy Peerin?
Yes, that's right. My name is Cathy Peerin. I'm the president of the Penticton Potters Guild, and I'm also an artist in residence. So,
How many artists in residence are there?
There are 8.
Ooh, okay. Okay. All right, let's go on to Brad. You have to unmute. Oh, there you go.
I
Brad.
have to unmute. Brad Hillis, I'm on the Arts Council and I'm the treasurer this year. So I'm looking at all the money.
Glad to have you here. Okay. Catherine Jones.
Hi, I'm Catherine Jones. I'm the executive director of the Penticton Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts.
Fabulous. I'm just going top to bottom here. And Shay.
Hi, I'm Shay. I am president of the Arts Council.
Perfect. All right, that brings us to George.
Hi, I'm George, one of the artists in residence. I've been a past member of the Arts Council as president, served on the Art Gallery Board, the School of the Arts Board, numerous other arts groups, and was one of the members of the Art Gallery Board when we built the current art gallery and moved from the other location. So I've been a resident artist at Leir House since 1978. I was the first artist there.
Fantastic. George, can I ask your last name? Sorry if you gave it to me already.
Trechev. And I'm a past city employee also.
Wow, what did you do for the city?
I ran the bylaw department.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you've got a lot of context to bring. Thank you for that. And then that brings us to Stacy.
Hey there, I'm Stacy. I'm the new vice president of the Arts Council, and I'm really excited to be here.
Fantastic. Okay. And then so here with you from the city is myself. I'm the public engagement program manager, and Jim Bauer. And Jim is our chief financial officer and also our general manager of finance and administration.
Good evening, everyone.
And so if we're not waiting or I didn't miss anybody, I guess we'll get started. So I will share my screen. Oh, Bethany, I think you need to give me permission. Okay. All right, so I'll just hit the slideshow button if it works for me. All right, so I think everyone's seeing our cover slide now. So tonight we're here to talk about asset and amenity management. And my big joke is that it's not the latest bingeable series on Netflix. No, it is a systematic process for planning and managing your assets to ensure that you make the best use of your scarce resources. And we've called our plan Civic Places and Spaces because people tend to glaze over when we say asset and amenity management, although I'm pretty sure Shay said that she wasn't going to glaze over. And that this is really scintillating content, but yeah, so we're here to talk to you about many of the city's buildings that are kind of reaching the end of their service life and working on a plan for the future of these buildings. Okay, so why are we here having a special meeting with the Leir House tenants? Well, you have a unique interest in this work because the building where that you occupy is one of the priority buildings in the asset and amenity management work. So we're here today to tell you about this work directly and answer any questions you have and also seek your feedback as we determine our path forward. There's no action required from you at today's meeting. It's simply for information purposes. And in the future, in November, we'll come back and talk to you about formally gathering your feedback as we seek to report back to Council in December. Before we get started, I have incorporated a land acknowledgement into our presentation, and this is uniquely important for this project because we're going to talk to you about 10 different sites, and all of those sites are located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Syilx Nation. And I'm confident that at the time when many of those sites were first conceived, that there probably wasn't a lot of respect or acknowledgement of that relationship between the Syilx and the lands. And as we reimagine the future of these facilities, we have an opportunity to do it in a much more respectful way. So what are we going to cover today? Well, we're going to give you a bit of background on this work. It's not new to the city, but it is likely new to you. We're going to give you the findings of a report that was recently completed that provides all of our analysis and our options, share a little bit with how we're planning to involve the community, and discuss some next steps in the process. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jim.
Hey, well, thanks, Joanne. So just by way of background, asset management is something that's critical and in fact mandated for municipalities to undertake in order to be eligible for federal and provincial grant funding as it relates to the improvement of our assets. In addition, asset and amenity management was identified as one of 3 council priorities fairly early in their term. And this was also reaffirmed in 2020 by Council when they undertook a strategic reset process with the onset of the pandemic. Now, as you can appreciate, this is a very large, complex project. And as a result, the city retained Collier's project leaders to help us work through this initiative. So in terms of why, why do we need to even be worrying and thinking about asset management? We've put together a short little 2-minute video just to provide a bit of a little bit more of a telling the story in terms of why we do that. And Joanne will just cue that up to play now.
Our residents enjoy an incredible and enviable lifestyle. Penticton has everything a community could want and need, including beaches and parks.
Joanne, we're not seeing the video.
Public transit and more. We've amassed.
We're still seeing you.
May I just quickly ask where the consultants were from?
So the consultants are from I'll say a range of different areas. There's some from the some of the staff work from the Lower Mainland. One of the individuals that's working on the initiative is located in Summerland as well. So primarily Vancouver, and then more locally out of Summerland.
Our residents enjoy an incredible and enviable lifestyle. Penticton has everything a community could want and need, including beaches and parks, rinks and galleries, theaters, public transit, and more. We've amassed an impressive list of assets and amenities, including infrastructure for water, sewer, and power, and general assets like municipal buildings and roads. Together, it has a value of $1.25 billion. The largest category is our general assets, including municipal buildings, our transportation system, parks, fleet, and equipment, which accounts for 44% of our asset mix, or $552 million. Many of these assets were built more than a half-century ago, And in the next 10 to 15 years, many will reach the end of their useful life. In fact, 7% are already past that point. Aging assets require increased public investment to stay in operating condition, but costs continue to rise. We should be investing an additional $3.8 million to maintain these assets. But that's money we don't have, and those dollars could be put to better use. With costs rising and funds unable to keep up, Council began the Asset and Amenity Management Project in 2019 to evaluate Penticton's asset mix and develop an innovative, forward-focused plan. A plan that will allow us to leverage assets and amenities and manage them in a fiscally responsible way that ensures the best use of the funds we have available. The aim is to continue to provide high-quality service. The goal is to do so without the burden of unsustainable tax increases. A responsible, sustainable plan requires creative thinking and strong decisions that will change our community, and residents are invited to be part of the discussion. Citizen involvement is encouraged and welcome, so register at shapeyourcitypenticton.ca. Review plans, leave comments, and stay informed. Penticton is our city. Let's roll up our sleeves and work together on a responsible plan that focuses on the needs of the future.
So in terms of the objectives that we were trying to achieve through this initiative was to develop a clear and actionable plan that addresses the city's key assets and amenities over the next 30 to 50 years. So very much taking a long-term perspective. In addition, wanting to provide funding strategies that are fiscally responsible and ensure a high quality of service that the community expects. Also want to identify innovative opportunities for use, funding, and management of our city facilities. And lastly, and most importantly, prioritization of recommendations for high impact community assets and amenities. So as you can appreciate, this is a very large project. So it's been broken down into 6 phases. The first phase, the information gathering phase, gathered information on the services that were being provided out of these various assets and amenities, looking at service demands, criticality, etc. And that information was presented to City Council back in summer of 2020. Since that point in time, work has been undertaken in the 3 subsequent phases: the analysis, the assessment, and the prioritization phase. And the culmination of that work was a report that we received from Colliers earlier in September this past year, and was presented to City Council on September the 21st. So since that point in time, we've now moved into the community engagement phase to really create more awareness and understanding of the report and the recommendations, and then also garner input and feedback from the community. And then that information will be brought back to City Council to help inform them, ultimately with the goal of finalizing the plan and then commencing implementation in 2022 and future years. So in terms of, as you saw in the video, City has about $1.25 billion in assets. And so the scope of the review was very much focused on our general assets, since we do have asset management plans in place for our other areas, the 4 utilities. So through this process, the review began to focus and really narrow on those that are most critical and the priority assets. And as you can see on the screen, there's 10 of those. So that includes City Hall, our 2 fire departments, our recreational facilities such as the Adidas Sportsplex and the McLaren and Memorial Arenas, and then our arts and culture facilities such as the Penticton Art Gallery, Cleland Theatre, Leir House, and the library and museum. Now, for each of these assets, there was a number of options that were analyzed, helping to lead to the recommendations that Colliers has put forward. And as part of the identification of the options and analyzing those, there's really 4 guidelines that were used. And the first was really to encourage planning for multifunctional use or consolidation of the facilities. The second was really supporting existing investment strategies, such as our North Gateway investment strategy. The third was to focus on core assets that are providing the greatest value and returns to the community. And then also wanting to leverage existing land assets wherever possible. We also need to consider the various funding and revenue challenges that the city faces. And then lastly, ensuring all of this is done in a prudent fiscal planning manner. So coming out of the review, there's 4 key recommendations that have been identified. The first is that the city would consolidate its ice surfaces at the SOEC site with the construction of a new twin arena that would then result in the demolition of McLaren and Memorial arenas. And then Memorial site would be converted to parking, and the McLaren site would be disposed of for commercial redevelopment. And any funds from these proceeds would be used to assist with paying for the twin arena facility. Second key recommendation is with regards to public safety. Given the age of our fire halls, what is recommended by the consultants is to develop a new public safety and emergency center downtown, and this would be replacing the fire hall number 1. That is located in the downtown area. And it would also house, in addition to the fire department, it would house our bylaw services, community policing, and the city's emergency operations center. Part of this recommendation also contemplates the necessary upgrading to fire hall number 2 at the current location, which is in the industrial park as needed. The third key recommendation is with regards to City Hall. Range of options were considered, such as replacing it either on the site or a different site. And what is recommended is that the city retain City Hall where it's located in the downtown area, and then modernize and upgrade it as required in the coming years. And then the fourth recommendation really relates to the arts and culture. And what is recommended is that a new purpose-built arts and culture center be created in the downtown area, and it would house the library, the museum, the art gallery, and other arts groups such as those that currently reside at the Leir House. And then following the construction of that, we would see the disposition of the library and museum and art gallery sites, and those proceeds would be used to assist funding this new center. Also, it's very important to highlight that Leir House would be, this important heritage facility would be retained, and then the idea is that it would be leased at commercial rates to commercial tenants. So some of the considerations in each of these recommendations, well, with regards to the twin arenas, going down this path really improves the functionality. So our current 2 older arenas are not NHL regulation size, so it certainly creates many challenges for use and the ability to provide a adequate playing surface for some of the sports groups. It also, having a new facility, will reduce our environmental footprint and create more energy efficiency. It's also going to increase economic activity in all seasons, as we'll be able to attract additional tournaments that will be able to make use of the facility. Having all the arenas on a single site will enable us to achieve greater operational efficiencies as we operate the 4 arenas. It also aligns very nicely with the new vision for the North Gateway investment strategy, given this is right in the heart of that area. We also have to be cognizant of affordability, and we know that user groups are concerned with the affordability of rates of these, and so that needs to be taken into consideration as we move forward. In addition, there's great historic value of Memorial Arena, lots of incredible memories, and so we need to be cognizant, aware of that, and looking at opportunities in terms of how we can honor that heritage should decision be made to construct this new facility. With regards to the McLaren Arena and some of the impacts, well, this really doesn't affect the ball diamond or the tennis courts. It's only the area right around the arena. And we do recognize that that property is currently zoned parks. And so should this, this plan be approved, we would have to go through a rezoning process for that, that portion of the property. With regards to public safety and emergency services, well, we really see greater collaboration amongst the public safety service departments. It also allows for more expansion. So certainly our bylaw services has grown over the past several years, and we anticipate it's going to continue to grow with the, the public safety issues and demands that are occurring in the community, in addition to our RCMP complement. So this new facility will allow for that expansion. In addition, having a new facility is going to provide adequate and functional space for fire services. So given the age of our fire halls, there are some major functional deficiencies that exist. For example, as the fire department is replacing its current fire trucks, new fire trucks that are coming in no longer fit in the bays that they currently have. So it's something that we certainly need to address. With regards to City Hall, well, maintaining City Hall downtown certainly contributes to the vibrancy in that part of the city. By maintaining and keeping what we have as opposed to spending significant money up front, enables us to invest in other priorities that we feel are more important to the community. And we also recognize that these improvements will need to be phased in over the coming years. Now, with regards to arts and culture, well, as I indicated, the intent is that this would be a purpose-built facility that would include modern functionality for the library, the museum, the art gallery, and the other arts organizations such as yourselves. And we really see that there can be synergies that are created with having these like-minded organizations co-located in the same facility. Having a center such as that in the downtown area also contributes to the vibrancy in the downtown core. A new facility will also reduce our environmental footprint and achieve operational efficiencies. And as I've mentioned already, this plan protects and preserves Leir House, this important historic asset. And then we also recognize that the library and museum site, as well as the art gallery, both of these are zoned public assembly. So should it be approved, there would be some rezoning processes that would need to be undertaken. So doing a bit of a deeper analysis with regards to the Leir House, and all of this information has been undertaken for the 10 facilities, but just going to highlight and really focus on the Leir House today. But if you are interested in some of the other assets that we just highlighted here, certainly our full report provides similar sort of details to those facilities. So when we look at the Leir House, it was built in 1929, so certainly a little bit more of an aged facility. Current condition is sitting at about 42%. This index is pretty much an industry standard that's used to evaluate the facility condition. Doesn't necessarily address the functionality as it relates to the users, but it's focused on the building condition. And the key thing on this is the higher the number, the better the condition the building is. So the lower the number it gets, the more critical it is that attention needs to be paid and investment needs to be made. So when we look at the building itself, the cost to replace it would be about $3.9 million. The cost to restore it significantly higher, $6.2 million. And this is really in regards to the construction methodology and the materials from this older building. From an annual investment perspective, over the past 3 years, we have spent on average about $5,000 a year, just with regards to some of the more significant aspects to the building. From an average annual life cycle cost. So this is something that's done to sort of look at how much should be spent on a building on a annual basis. We should be spending about $149,000. So clearly we should be investing more than what we currently do today. So when the consultants reviewed each of these assets, they developed a range of options. And as you can see for Leir House, there was 4 options that were developed. And just going to sort of run through each of those fairly quickly. So the orange option was really sort of the continue as is. So we continue to invest at the sort of at the current funding levels, which remains quite flat, certainly for the first 9 or so years, and then it really starts to jump up as we see some major components that need to be replaced. The second, the green line, is really continuing the maintenance, and this is really moving to the annual average life cycle cost. So it certainly shows a much higher sort of cost amount. The third is really to continue with maintenance and costs as planned at the Leir House, and then with the relocation of your organizations to this new center, moving to a commercial lease rate type of model. So you can see that that's certainly a little bit lower. And then the fourth is really continuing with the current maintenance at the sort of planned levels, and then moving to commercial tenancy as your organizations are relocated to the center. And then that one contemplates that that's essentially a portion of that property would be sold off after it's rezoned. So that's why it certainly looks the sort of the lowest cost on these. And what is recommended by Colliers is actually option number 3. So that's the yellow line there. So when you compare the yellow line to the orange line, certainly in the earlier years, it would be cheaper just to continue as is. But by the time we hit year 10, it certainly starts to jump up, and it is much more cost effective, at least over the coming years. And then the 2 lines certainly intersect again at about year 20.
Can I ask a question here?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you want to wait till later?
You know what? Why don't I'll finish the presentation. We can come back and raise or answer your question at that point.
If I
Nancy.
remember.
Okay, I'll prompt it if you don't. So moving on to the next slide here. So just to summarize, now this table or graph really tries to represent all of the scenarios for the 10 different assets that were looked at or considered. And the orange line is essentially the sort of continue as is at the current investment levels. So as you can see, very, very low in the first few years, and then it starts to climb up. And by the time we hit years 12 through 14, it really starts to climb up quite a bit more steeply. And the yellow line is the one that is the recommended investment plan that has been proposed here. And certainly it is much more expensive in the earlier years, but by the time we hit about year 13, that intersects with the continue as is. And then looking out beyond to the 20-year time horizon, you can see there is a fairly significant gap that it would be more cost effective for with regards to the capital investment that's required. And so that would save the city about $20 million in capital investment over a 20-year period. So just with regards to the timing of some of this capital investment and the phasing of things, certainly what is recommended that move fairly quickly with regards to the fire hall and the redevelopment of a primary the consolidated public safety facility downtown. Closely at the same time frame would be commencing with the new twin arena facility, and then decommissioning of the 2 rinks. And then after that, year 5, 6, 7, etc., would be looking to consolidate and create the the Consolidated Arts and Culture Centre, and then you can see some of the additional investment in other areas such as City Hall, soccer, the indoor soccer facility, and Fire Hall number 2. And then just to summarize, when you look at things from a triple bottom line perspective, environmentally, we'll have fewer and newer facilities, which will reduce our environmental footprint and achieve better energy efficiency. From a social perspective, this will enable us to address and improve accessibility for those individuals that have accessibility challenges. It's also going to provide modern functionality, which will enhance the ability of the services that are being delivered to the community. I have to comment in terms of the focus and the approach that the consultants have undertaken here has been very much focused on the on the financial aspects, hasn't necessarily captured all of the intrinsic and other considerations. And so we need to be cognizant of that. And that's really what we're trying to do in terms of get input from the community. But along with that, we need to look at opportunities to honor the heritage of some of these facilities that may be decommissioned. And then also, the plan really establishes facilities not only for today, but also for future generations to come. So this really looks out, as I said earlier, very much from a long-term perspective. So as we see facilities that are 40, 50, and 60 years today, if we look out another 50 years, what's the functionality of those going to be, and are we better served to invest in new facilities that will really meet the needs of many years to come. Lastly, then, from an economic perspective, as I mentioned, we see a capital investment being reduced by about $20 million over the next 20 years. It's also going to enable us to achieve lower annual maintenance costs. And then lastly, this is really going to extend and create a longer service life for the facilities. And with that, I'll turn it back to Joanne just to talk about our engagement plan and next steps.
Thanks so much, Jim. As I'm sure you can all imagine, this is a pretty dramatic recommendations for our entire community. And so as a result, we really want to focus in October on getting the story out there and helping people to understand the work that's been done and what is envisioned before we actually formally gather their feedback. So October is all about roadshow presentations, community pop-ups, open houses, and then when in November, we're going to kind of formally gather feedback. And really what we're going to be looking for is, does the community think there's kind of enough merit to these recommendations that we should take the next step of more formally developing proposals, concepts, and analysis? And what you can see over here with the round circle is, there may be some of these recommendations may land fairly well for the community and may make a lot of sense and be easy to kind of move forward on. And others may need more work, more collaboration, more consultation before we can move them forward. So we're allowing for that in the process. And that's something that will reveal itself as we proceed on the engagement. And so here are some of the key dates and activities. We're kind of midstream in October here. We've got our first big community-wide session tomorrow night, and that'll talk about the arenas, or it will focus more on the arenas. And then we'll have another one on Thursday that'll focus more on the arts. And I strongly encourage you to promote this to your networks so that they can get the same presentation that you received tonight and the same opportunity to ask questions. And with that, let's get to the questions. I'm going to stop sharing so that we can see all of our participants. And Nancy, was that you who had a question? Did you want to start us off? Was that Nancy? I didn't see.
Yeah, it was.
Perfect.
I'm interested. Can we go back to any of those slides? Like I'm
Absolutely.
interested in the one that was the Leir House with all the different lines on it.
So the one with the lines versus the kind of background summary.
I think it's slide 18. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So just to clarify, what I heard you say was at this point the city is putting in $5,000 a year. And what is needed is $150,000. Is that, did I hear that properly? Yeah, this one.
Yes, yeah. So in terms of the $5,000 is this is a 3-year average. So we looked at what have we done over the last 3 years, and on average, it's $5,000 a year. The average annual life cycle cost is basically, it's sort of a calculation saying based upon the value of an asset, this is how much you should be investing in an asset. And I can clearly say and tell you that the city, and I would say any municipality, does not invest in their assets to that level. It's not something, I guess, that we could affordably do, and so that's a little bit of the challenge. And so we really have to I'll say prioritize, and we have to focus on what are we going to do, because that's a little bit of the conundrum that
it's a pretty big discrepancy between those two numbers, which is an interesting thing. Can you go back to that one with the lines just to look at that again? Yeah. So the one that is being recommended is this orange, the light orange line.
The yellow line.
Yeah, yellow line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that is continuing with that $5,000 a year maintenance. That's what it's talking about. Am I reading that properly?
Yeah. So what is proposed here? Yeah, we continue with maintenance and costs at planned, sort of at the planned level. So that's essentially what what the consultant has proposed, and sort of the basis of their recommendation.
And so what do they mean by the planned level?
So it's in terms of what they would have done is they would have looked at what the city has incorporated or included in our financial plan over the next number of years, and built that into the figures that they have here. So I don't have sort of the specific, I'll say, spending plan that is included in there, but I know, one of the things that has been discussed, I know that council had raised this through its notice of motion process, was the need to replace the windows, which I think are starting to fail at that facility. So that would be one example where there are some items. So so certainly there, just because we have been spending $5,000 a year, doesn't mean to say that it's going to sort of continue at that level indefinitely.
So when you're saying continue with maintenance, you're not talking about that discrepancy between $150,000 and $5,000.
No,
yeah.
What I'd say is it's probably going to land somewhere, somewhere in between that. And that methodology, it basically says you should be sort of saving or putting aside $150,000 a year, recognizing some years you're going to have maybe a larger expense for a more significant component. Other years it might be a little bit less.
And just one other quick question around Leir House. So the idea of holding on to this facility as a heritage building within the city, what about the parkland around it?
Yeah, so there's, certainly I think there was, the consultants have proposed that we look to I'll say a commercial tenancy in the facility. There's no contemplation of, I'll say, rezoning or changing sort of the park property around that. I think their one option, which was option number 4, I think that contemplated a portion of the property. I think, in fact, they're talking about sort of half of that lot would be sort of split off, rezoned, and sold. So that's something that they did look at. Certainly not what was recommended, and certainly I don't think, unless we heard otherwise from the community, I don't think we would be sort of in any way, shape, or form entertaining that option.
And if I could just pick up there too, Jim, if we had shown you the charts for all the other buildings, with the exception of, occasional blips over time, that same level of minimal investment is kind of plagued all of these facilities. And so Leir House is not alone in that kind of low spend year to year.
Yeah, well, and sort of it goes back to in the video we had that one little graphic, and it shows what we're currently spending and what we should be. Basically, we should be spending $3.8 million more, so we'd have to increase taxes by 11% just on top of everything else that we're doing, just to sort of create a funding stream for that. And we know that's just not affordable to our taxpayers. So that's why we're just trying to come up with other
They would
innovative options.
definitely get grumpy about that. I would think,
They would, yeah.
Thanks for that, Nancy. Bethany, I see you have your hand up.
I just wanted to quickly add, in, even though it's a really small amount, like their numbers also too don't take into account the amount that the Arts Council puts into maintenance and upgrades for the Leir House. Like for the past year, we put in 20,000, past 2 years rather, we put in about $10,000 each year in different types of flooring and other types of upgrades. And also like some of the upgrades that we did in conjunction with the city, like with the flooring, but also with the carriage house, and then what some of the artists in residence and also some of the other tenants have done in some of their spaces as well for upgrading as well too. So it doesn't take that into consideration.
Yeah, thanks for raising that. I think that's an important aspect that we need to capture and reflect.
Thanks, Bethany. Are there any other kind of comments, questions?
I think that the Arts Council was going to give the floor over to the other groups tonight because we had our chance to speak last time. And then if there's time for any of us to add things at the end, we can throw that over.
Excellent, because I can start calling on people. Cathy Peerin, how about you? What were your reactions? Did this surprise you? Are you excited, cautiously optimistic about what's being discussed?
I love the idea of the arts community being together. I think I feel pretty positive about that. But I do have some questions because when you talk about taking something like the Potter's Guild and putting it into this facility, there's space to consider. We have about 1,000 square feet downstairs in the basement, but it does provide us cold storage, heated drying cabinets, kiln areas, which are fired like 3 to 6 times a week, right? We have 24-hour access, so we're able to kind of fire our kilns and get everything done. We're at ground level, right? So some of our workshops and things are surrounding alternative firing techniques. So we use outside space in the park as much as we can, right? And appreciate the ability to do that at that ground level. I don't know how access would fit, in that environment, right? So for the guild. Speaking about our kilns, we have 2 at the moment. Both are wired in through the building.
They're located outside?
No, they're located inside.
Okay.
Right there. So when we talk about storage for art galleries and museums, like how do they feel about exhaust from kilns or heat, and how close, how close will that, like, what does that look like on the footprint, right, of where everything is? Another big thing is our costs, right? Like, we've been subsidized by the city. We're appreciative to the Arts Council for having us under their umbrella, and they've done a lot to develop us in the last short little while, and they've always been there for us, right? And they help us. How they help us enables us to fundraise for the community, and we fundraise for the art gallery. We do bursaries for the schools. We host other BC artists for workshops, and not only for our guild but for for the community at large. So how, what's the cost to being in a great facility like that, and then the last thing is, like we you identified that it would be leased to a commercial developer, but that means that all of the groups would go to this new facility, right? So the status quo is doesn't sound like it's a consideration.
Mhm, mhm.
So those are some of the things, some of the things that we had come up with.
Yeah, so I'll maybe jump in and try to provide some comments on a few of those points there. With regards to meeting the needs of the Potters Guild and how could that work in a new facility. I think at this point in time, what we were doing was sort of getting a sense directionally. Do the groups embrace this idea or this concept of coming together? And if there was support and a decision was made for that, then the next step would be start looking at the programming or the functional design of the facility, and understanding all of the group's needs. How can those all be accommodated in that, so that way we come up with a facility that meets the needs of the various groups that would be located in there. So it would be through a collaborative and engaged process. It's not as though the city's contemplating, well, we'll just build something and then you need to sort of come in and hopefully it works for you. We have to understand your needs and then sort of work forward on how all the the different groups could be I'll say co-located and ensure that there's compatibility and those types of things. So I think that's the process. It's more in terms of if people like this idea, then we need to sort of move through the next step of exploring how could that work and that sort of thing. With regards to the funding and what have you, certainly we recognize that we have a new facility. Everyone would love to be in a new facility, and there are going to be costs associated with that. But at the same time, too, similar to we didn't have it specifically on the Arts and Culture Centre considerations slide, but similar to what we had on the arena slide. We need to be cognizant of the affordability to your groups, because if the city is going to turn around and start charging you rent, it's just going to take money from programming and the services that you can provide to the community and just sort of put it into a rent payment. So we don't want to be losing that. So certainly the intent is that we would maintain a very, very similar sort of approach to how it's maybe structured or funded today. Certainly I can't commit in terms of what a future council might choose to do, but certainly the idea is not to go down a path of saying, well, no, we're now moving everyone to a market rate lease or something like that. That is not at all the intention. The last point that I was just going to talk about was a little bit of saying sort of status quo is not an option. I think part of this is sort of understanding and hearing everyone's sort of views, concerns, at this point, because then that'll help inform City Council whether these are showstoppers or whether they can be addressed and incorporated and moving forward. As Joanne indicated, this stage, we're not seeking support or sort of notionally asking for for people to sign off on this. It's more just sort of creating an understanding and awareness, and then as we start to gather more of these facts, we'll take this back to city council. And some of these decisions for some of these facilities, they might be fairly quick decisions. And I'm going to use City Hall. I don't think there's going to be a lot of contention that we're just going to keep our existing building and we're going to fix it up as opposed to building a new fancy City Hall. So expect that decision may be a little bit quicker and easier. But some of these other ones, such as the arenas and this Consolidated Arts and Culture Centre, there may be more concerns, more diverse things that need to be considered. And so this may not be a decision that's made in the next several months, or may even take a year or longer to sort of come to that. So we fully recognize that if we need to explore and understand all of these aspects further, well, we need to take that time before the city makes a decision and moves forward. And through that process, if it is determined that there are some insurmountable hurdles, that it's just we cannot address it going down this path, then we're going to have to sort of adjust and change it. Maybe it isn't going to be quite what the consultants have reflected. Like they developed the recommendations based upon input and involvement from, I'm going to say, some individuals, but as you can appreciate with You know, it started with more facilities, more assets. We narrowed it down to 10, and then we tried to come up with the different options. And we could have spent a lot more money if they kind of looked at all these variations. And so we, you know, appreciate it. They haven't captured everyone's views, and this is what this process is really trying to do. So hopefully that provides some insight to the questions. And I think I answered most of your questions. I might have missed something in between there, though. But does that help you a little bit there, Cathy?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Okay.
About Catherine.
Yeah, hi. So I did have some questions. Actually, I had a whole speech written up, but I'm not going to give it. But one of the things when I was seeing the information gathering session, I thought, wow, no one asked me.
Catherine, I think you should read that letter.
Do you? She's my boss.
Well, feel free to read it and also to email it to us, and we can include it in the whole package of notes.
Okay, well, then I'm going to read this.
Okay.
So, the Penticton Academy of Music Society, we call ourselves PAMDA, we are a charitable nonprofit society. We were incorporated in 1994. However, music lessons have been taught at Leir House since 1969, including in the 1980s and 90s when the Okanagan Summer School of the Arts was based in Leir House. As the music portion of the OSSA grew, it became apparent that separate organization was warranted to handle the community's needs. Since incorporation, the Academy has grown considerably in student numbers, programs, and supplementary events over the years. This year, we have 18 faculty members and approximately 200 students. We have a string orchestra, musical theater classes, speech arts programs, and private lessons for a variety of instruments ranging from piano to cello to French horn. Our student base is also diverse, with beginners ranging from 4 to, I'm guessing she's 74 years old. Our faculty are highly trained professionals, and part of our objective is to ensure that they are properly compensated for their expertise. The vast majority of the tuition that we receive goes directly to the faculty. This helps us attract and retain world-class musicians in our community. We are, for the most part, self-sufficient, and we actively fundraise throughout the year for our bursary and scholarship program. This program helps us ensure that high-quality music and dramatic arts education is available to everyone in our community of all ages, levels, and financial means. Even during 2020, we continued to operate with most of our faculty pivoting to online lessons for the remainder of the academic year. When we returned to in-person lessons in September, we were only down by about 25% in enrollment, which is pretty impressive. And this year, we are steadily climbing back to pre-COVID times. However, in order to gain traction and fully recover from the pandemic, we need to reassure the members of our community that we are on solid ground, especially after such a turbulent time. And the regular announcements in the newspaper and on the radio of our move from Leir House have been an unexpected development. And it's important for our business that messaging from the city about a possible move to a new facility does not undermine our recovery efforts and our ongoing programs. The speed of this community engagement is really disruptive to our operations, and we have not had time to properly consult with our internal community. I think it's really important that the city be mindful that arts groups right now are at a really, really busy time, and we are trying desperately to navigate COVID, right? This is a real thing that's hitting us. That said, here's our position with respect to the new facility. At Leir House, we use the bedrooms upstairs for our 10 studios and 1 office. Most of these studios are large enough for 1 piano and 2 people with space between instructor and student. We also have 2 washrooms, a reception area, and a storage space for our inventory of instruments that we lend students. For us to survive a move to a new facility, we would need at least this number of studios, as well as a performance space for our monthly recitals and group classes at a rate comparable to what we are receiving now, with assurances that the rent would remain affordable. The society was formed to ensure that high quality music education is accessible to everyone in our community. And we do that because we know what we're doing is so much more than just playing music. There are many documented benefits to music education, including learning skills to reduce anxiety, fight stress, and deal with fear. And students studying music are found to be less likely to abuse substances later in life. We have helped thousands of Pentictonites access these life skills. We consider what we do to be essential to our community. Yeah. There you go.
Wonderful. Yeah. Sorry if our communications caused any distress for you guys. There's absolutely no question that the city is greatly values what PAMDA brings to the table, and are thrilled that the longevity and of the service. I'm curious, does PAMDA encounter any problems in Leir House with the facility? Like, is there anything, like, one of the main goals of this whole initiative is to provide purpose-built space, and groups like the library, the museum, and the art gallery are super excited about that. Is that a challenge for PAMDA?
You know, it's not the facility.
There's quite an echo, Joanne.
Oh, sorry.
It's not the facility itself, actually. I think that we would all be very interested in it. I know that I have facility envy anytime I go down to Chilliwack, but I also have facility fear when I look at what happened to the Rotary Centre in Kelowna and how it became inaccessible to the very groups it was supposed to be serving. So, you know, we are definitely open to the conversation. We're definitely, you know, we love where we are, and we're also keen to grow. But the timing of this seems really rushed. It's incredibly inconvenient during COVID, during registration, during our AGMs, during our year end, all of that. So if when you're doing your messaging, you could, I don't know, somehow help, that would be better, you know?
I do have to echo Catherine on that as well too. This was an incredibly stressful period of time for us at our organization already. And to add the assets on top of it, like, I haven't had any time off in almost 2 years, and have worked an incredible amount of overtime to ensure that our arts programming and our local artists and arts community were supported. And to kind of have this thrown at you when we're heading into kind of like, oh, there's a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, but also a lot of fear for the fall coming up, was very bad, you know, for our organizational health, but also on a personal level, and for a lot of the people in the building too, for, you know, our mental wellness as well too. It wasn't a very equitable situation for us. So that's a lot more support around that in the future would be greatly appreciated.
Being mindful that, for example, I'm the only employee, you know, and so I'm fielding all of the questions around that. Now, I've been reading everything, but frankly, I read the PSA from the city. I'm on the list. I read that before I got the email saying, oh, we're releasing this. And it was a little bit of a blind side. And it's not that we're, you know, like, we're open to talking about it. We love Leir House though, and, you know, we're thinking about, you know, the effects of all of this. But if you could really think about the timing, and is it necessary that I now send out a message tomorrow to my entire community telling them to attend something on Thursday? If I didn't have that on my to-do list tomorrow, I'd be really happy, you know? Anyways, that's.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and we'll definitely incorporate those comments that this has contributed stress for the organizations during an already stressful time. Definitely apologize for adding that. This is going to be a multi-year process. So this is just a very early stage, a very early step, and in some ways it's like ripping off the Band-Aid that this work is needs to happen. You know, in regards to like the arenas, this conversation's been happening for 5 years, but for you guys, it's just kind of starting this year. So definitely can appreciate how it is definitely feels like it's coming out of left field for you.
I think about the Penticton Arts Council and the huge amount of work, the beautiful restorations that were done on floors, the hours and hours of volunteer work. PAMDA, though it isn't the upstairs, we benefit from the beauty of what's happened down there, and I feel in my heart for that group of people that have worked so hard to kind of, in the same way as Catherine has expressed, to just be blindsided by this, that there wasn't an opportunity. It doesn't feel respectful. I understand you're working at something, but the reality of all of this is what makes a vibrant community. The piece of your presentation that made me kind of smile a bit was the vibrancy of City Hall. Well, I would beg to suggest that the vibrancy of some of these arts places is much more impactful.
So just, I was going to add to what Joanne was saying, and I think certainly we were trying to I'll say involve and engage with some of the groups, and certainly we could have and should have done a better job as sort of we were working through, and sort of as we were getting to the point where this was going to come out more publicly. So I think that's something that we recognize we needed to or could have done a much better job. That being said, as you saw in terms of some of the proposed timing and maybe the phasing of some of these things, these are not decisions and steps that are looking to be made immediately. So this is not as though there's going to be any change to what's happening at Leir House in the foreseeable future. I think what's contemplated or recommended by the consultant was, we're probably talking about 5 years out that we would look to start creating this new consolidated center. So there'd be no change in terms of what's happening if that timeline was adopted for another 5 years. So I think in terms of just sort of going out to your your membership and individuals in your circles, this is not something that is looking to be changed. The implementation of these things are not in the short term. They have very, very long time horizons, and part of that too is recognizing that if we need to have a much lengthier and longer conversation, when the time is more suitable for your groups, well then we need to adjust and do that when it works better for you in that regard. So I just wanted to sort of allay any or leave any fears that, well, we're looking to get a decision and then start moving forward in the short term. That's not at all the case. We're wanting to start planning for something that would potentially come to fruition a number of years out from now. So I think you can sort of be reassured that I don't think there's nothing that's imminent that is going to sort of put all the great work and the things that your organizations are doing at risk. So hopefully that maybe just sort of alleviates some of those concerns.
I do have a sense, as Catherine was saying, like the 21st of October is a really quick time to sort of muster forces to have people say what they're feeling. So thank you for that, Jim. That is.
Yeah, and we're not collecting feedback until November, and that's just preliminary. This is just, we are all over town sharing information. We're at V's Games, we're at the Trade Convention Center, we're meeting with the art gallery, the library, the museum, the arena user groups, and just to have that same introductory conversation with everyone. Catherine, you mentioned that you had some questions in addition to your letter. Did you provide those to us, or?
Oh, I don't remember, Joanne.
That's okay. They can come back. We can come back to you. We can. I think George is ready to jump in here.
Yeah, this is going to be tough. I'm neither for nor against personally, but I have all kinds of red flags, deja vu going up here. one of the first things before I get into the points from the heirs artist, from the artist in residence, according to your flow chart, we're into like step number 3. Why weren't the arts groups consulted in step number 1, which is the consulting idea? I mean, and then with that, you would have been able to then say, this is what we need for a facility. So my next question is, how can you come up with a cost analysis if you don't know what you're going to have to build? How can you compare a cost without having a figure of what you're going to have to build to what it's going to cost you to run Leir House? You understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
How can you come up with a figure if you don't know the facility you might have to build to fit everything in that the arts groups need? Might be the size of the SOCE. You know, reasonably, that's about what you're looking at. But let's get down to the questions from heirs. We'll get into that. Number 1, they're asking the artist in residence, will there be designated studio spaces for the artists to rent below commercial rates, you know, subsidized and affordable? And I think you may have answered part of that already. So Jim may have answered that. So we'll go on from there. The other thing is, will each organization in the center have their own workshop space, such as the Arts Council and the art gallery, the museum, which holds workshops and lectures? Sharing doesn't work because of the scheduling, is such as at the Rotary Center for the Arts in Kelowna. It didn't work there. Many groups had to move out. Sharing doesn't work because a lot of them want to hold workshops the same time. They depend on that income from workshops. So each group would need their own facility. The other thing is, if they do have their own different areas, who will coordinate everything? Will the city be hiring an employee to coordinate everything in the building? There's another cost. Then the other thing is, will the Arts Council and the Art Gallery have their own gallery spaces? Because the Arts Council gallery space is a lot different than the art gallery space. The art gallery brings in international shows, national shows, well-known artists. The Arts Council gallery space is a public gallery space for artists up and coming or other artists showing privately, sometimes work that's not acceptable in the major art galleries. So that's important to have the 2 gallery spaces separate from each other. Without those workshop areas and with the other, how can I put it? Without workshop areas, without the gallery spaces, people no longer take memberships with the Arts Council. After memberships begin to go, the Arts Council goes too. So you lose a group eventually in the community. The other thing is, if there is studio spaces or workshop areas, you have to be cognizant that a lot of the classes, the artists use oil paints and other types of paints and smells and odors and chemicals. So the building has to be equipped with proper ventilation and air exchange systems and stuff to cover that. Get on to another point. It's great to have everything combined in one building. But when you look at the major successful arts communities throughout North America, and I travel, I'm a traveling artist. I travel all over North America doing shows, and your major areas are the successful ones, are the ones that have arts facilities all around the community, not in one central place. That draw hundreds of thousands of tourists a year. You take Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Carmel, Whitefish, Montana, you know, just to name a few, and it goes on the list. So even if you have a central thing, you still have to have some outlying areas. And that's where Leir House itself would be one of those key things to keep as artist studios. Maybe not some of the other stuff, but at least this artist studios. The other thing that the artists...
Stuff, I don't know about that.
Yeah. The other The other concern some of the heirs artists had was who is designing the building. We went through this with the art gallery, and at the same time they were building the recreation area, the swimming pool area, and that the city insisted that we not use the architect we were going to use, who was how can I put it, a builder of art galleries. He had designed a number of art galleries. Instead, we used the city architect. Pierre Avard was his name. He had no experience in designing pools or that, no experience in designing art galleries. And we lost a lot of the granting because he didn't design it properly. We lost, it was supposed to be a solar gallery. We lost all the grants for that, so we couldn't do that. The air exchange system wasn't right. The conditioning for keeping artwork wasn't right. Temperature controls. And we had problems with the swimming pool area because of his design. So the thing is, you need to get the proper people designing a building. The artists don't like a commercial sterile building. It has to be something that's conducive to the arts and to being creating a feeling where you want to create. You take, for instance, the new Emily Carr building in Vancouver. Their new campus is a failure. It's not doing as well as the old one. And the old one, they want to rent at commercial rates, but nobody's renting it. It's not conducive to being commercial. Leir House could be the same way. Okay. I'm just going through my quick notes of what the other artists wanted. So a lot of these aren't my ideas, they're from the other artists. We've gone through that. One of the ideas was Leir House could be set aside as part of a museum and be restored to a time when it was the Leir residence. And I think that was ruled out in some of the consultants' ideas. One of the other things is, where would this new building be located? Would there be grounds as at Leir House? Gardens areas, because artists really enjoy that. At our place, the artists get outside and paint a lot. They do things outside. So it's really important. And one of the major problems, what will parking be like? Because if you have the theater in the building and you have a theater going on and you have 2 workshops going on and you have a gallery opening going on, that's a lot of parking. And years ago, when I sat on the parking committee, we looked at putting up, and I was doing bylaw then, we looked at putting up parkades downtown. And the cost estimates that came in that over 40 years, they wouldn't pay for themselves and the building would be obsolete. So that was thrown out. So if we do put in a facility downtown, what will the parking be? There's no parking downtown as it is. Parking is a problem. I'm almost done.
No, that's good. Thank you, George.
Yep.
Yeah, and just one of the things people said, the city has a poor history of planning. We look at the rec center, which I already mentioned, and the SOCE, which we're all supposed to break even within 5 to 10 years, and I think they're still far behind. Same with the museum and library. So I think I've pretty well covered everything that I want to cover. If the facility's done right, it could be a great facility. If it's done wrong, it's going to be a for sale facility, empty. And, we spend a lot of money on our sports. I've been involved here with the sports. I started the rugby club here and a number of other things. Yeah, I've done.
The Renaissance man of Penticton.
Southern Interior Land Trust, one of my startup projects too, all kinds of things. But anyway, you talked about NHL size ice surfaces and putting them in. And again, parking will be an issue over there too, with the casino and everything else. But you said this would help draw people to Penticton. It would help promote Penticton and get things going. A proper arts facility would do it too. Not something that's condensed, but you need the 2 galleries or 3 galleries. You need a large facility with all designed properly. If you're going to draw people, then we can bring people to Penticton for arts tourism. And the city has to promote it. Right now, the city didn't even know some of the arts groups existed. So anyway, I will sign off on that note.
Excellent,
Thanks.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that input. I just, a couple of comments. It's come up in other sessions as well. Citing some of the experiences of other areas, whether what has worked or what has not worked. And I think that's one. I was just going to comment. That's, I think, one very, very important thing that we cannot lose sight of in terms of what worked or didn't work in Kelowna. At the Rotary Center for Arts there, and sort of learning from other mistakes in other communities that we don't repeat those here. So certainly, learning and taking those things in as we move forward is critical.
Anyone else have any further questions or comments?
I'd just like to really quickly echo what George was saying about the use of the grounds and how important they are for arts organizations to have that type of external, green space for activities. PAMDA regularly holds outdoor concerts. There's exhibitions, there's workshops, classes, all kinds of events. I mean, of course, with COVID, that all got pretty much shut down. We're starting to roll things back out again. But, in high years where everybody's healthy and all of that, those types of, external spaces are invaluable to all of our organizations. And so, I mean, that would maybe be something that would need to be taken into consideration as well, too. And maybe, I know you guys were talking about a vertical building, but maybe something that was more horizontal. I mean, and just optically, that might be a better type thing. And because we're also speaking about frontage as well, and how that would look, right? So that's just, I was really thinking about that a lot today, and just how much we do use the green space of the Leir House, and just how important it is to all of our organizations.
That is vibrant in the city.
Great, that was just a lot of really valuable context and history and background for us. And I don't know if you can see my hands, but I'm left-handed, so when I write, got all the ink on my hand. So I've been taking, I've got about 8 pages of notes here. So thank you very much for that. And I really hope that, Catherine, that you will. I can email you tomorrow, or if you want to provide that message to Bethany, then I'll include it in our notes. So it's in there word for council and everyone else who's interested to hear what PAMDA has to say. And yeah, so it's 8:19, and I'm just curious, are there any other comments before I let you back to your evenings? Oh, it looks like Shay has something. You're on mute, Shay.
There's the button. I just wanted to make sure also to acknowledge the fact that I'm sure everybody here also knows the amount of meetings and talks you guys are going through at this point during all of this. So again, thank you for, answering all the questions we have put out to you, just to make sure we do acknowledge and appreciate that portion of things. Yeah.
So, Joanne and Jim, what next steps?
So we have a number of, so we've largely met with most of the stakeholder groups through these first few weeks of October. And then in the remaining few weeks, we're going out to kind of the broader public. And this has allowed us to kind of see, what it is, what kind of support or view, confirmation of your positions that we're going to be looking for from these groups in November. So we'll be coming back to you in November just to have a further discussion. Our hope is that you do have the opportunity to talk amongst yourselves, talk with your networks, share information. And, if it comes back that it's still too soon to kind of say whether or not there's any interest in going that next step, then, that's good feedback for us. But our hope is to to go back to council in December, just to tell them what we've heard over the past 2 months. And if we think we can move forward on some things, then, you know, maybe we'll put a recommendation forward like that. And if we need to spend more time on other areas, then that'll be the recommendation as well. So yeah, so I guess I'm not sure that was a long answer.
Yeah,
Few more
no,
events.
that's good. And
Okay.
so when you say the term next steps, what are you sort of envisioning with that?
So one of the things, as we mentioned, we have chatted the library, the museum, art gallery, and the Arts Council. Everybody wants to get together as one group and have a joint conversation before any of the arts and culture groups kind of land on their position on this proposal. So my next step will be to invite all of you to kind of a bigger session to have a conversation with the arts and culture groups where we can talk about needs, visions, guiding principles, what success could look like, and really more further information process for yourselves, not a workshop to design a building, but really just can we work together as groups? Is there really enough value there to move this forward? And so we'll do that in November, and then we're going to ask all of your organizations to pen a letter to council and let us know like whether or not you think you'd like to move forward to that next step of developing a concept in collaboration with the other arts and culture groups. But that's kind of what it looks like. Oh, Nancy.
Sorry, do you have a timeline on that meeting, are you thinking?
I sometime mid-November, I was hoping. Do you have a suggestion for me? Something
No.
Okay.
I don't.
It's just that we're planning our AGM sometime mid-November.
Okay. Fair enough.
And I think it might be beneficial too for the arts groups to meet without the city first.
Sure.
And then to meet with you guys again after. And a question that actually did come to me through one of our community members, I wasn't able to answer it, was when is the next city council elections?
So the next election will be in October of 2022. So,
Okay, so next year.
basically a year from now, yes.
And are you guys wanting to have this in any way wrapped up before that? Or are you still open to the process of it extending into the next elected city council?
Well, I think it really depends on what we hear from, from the various groups and the community. If we hear resounding support for one of these recommendations, then then we'd look to sort of wrap that up, and then that helps us to start sort of planning and determining what would be done. If we don't hear resounding support, there's concerns, there's maybe reluctance, or sort of, I'll say, pushback in moving this direction. Well, then that's something that we would have to take a longer time horizon. So in some cases, some of these things may not be resolved before the next city council. We're hopeful that some of them can, but we're also realistic that, or I think it's unrealistic to assume that all four of these recommendations would sort of make it to that stage in the coming months.
I really love the idea of the arts groups in the city getting together.
Mm-hmm.
When you were asking Joanne about suggestions, I didn't off the top of my head have a thought, but I'm wondering, with November being our AGM and pretty quick, then we're into Christmas planning. What about looking at the new year? Just slowing down a little wee bit and letting us breathe on this. And Bethany, I love the idea of that. I love the idea of people getting together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Arts Council would second that thought as well, because we've had some significant changes in our organization over the past year, and we would really like some grounding time to be able to, have our new board be able to, get into place. We've just had, we still have some things rolling out for the rest of the year. And we want to make sure that we're able to do this in a thoughtful way.
Yeah.
And that encompasses all of our supporters, our members, the artists that interact with us. We also have a lot of social service organizations that interact with us, and they're heading into an extremely busy time as well. And so I don't feel that we would be able to get as much of their attention as we could get in the new year. So I would echo that, you know, kind of regrouping again in the new year would be best for our organization too.
Right. Well, we'll take that under advisement and have a conversation ourselves. And like I said, this is just the beginning of many conversations. So we're off to a good start. Okay, any other thoughts from anyone? No, you're all right. Well, thank you again so much for being so candid and sharing your thoughts. And yeah, we'll be in touch very soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
And just for ease of use of sharing the video, we will be uploading it to our YouTube channel because that's probably going to be the easiest way to share it to everybody's members. So just a heads up on that.
Awesome.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.
Bye.
Good night. She's on. Okay. Hey, what do you guys think? Oh, people are still leaving.
Well, I think George came up with some great thoughts about the problems. I know the arts